tying their own hands because they're like, I can't risk this because this is not safe. I am not guaranteed the right to my property. That's all that property rights means. For the longest time, for me, I figured that South Africa is where it is today because of, Mandela eventually taking over and knowing that those guys were pretty much commies, they were self-proclaimed commies. To me, not looking at it deeper, I thought to myself, okay, he probably brought his commie ways to South Africa, and of course, fast forward today, they are where they are. They probably be put in place all the worst policies they could put in place that would be killing businesses, stifling killing industrialization, making it go backwards. Meanwhile, incentivizing people to basically not be productive members of society.
Welcome to the State of the Nation. Today, we're going to talk about the most important topic that we have ever discussed on this channel, and that is business and the economy. And it really honored that for the first time, we are going to be talking to a renowned international prosperity activist, even better, right? A prosperity activist, and that is Magatte. Magatte, welcome to the State of the Nation. So great to have you on here.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt. It's a pleasure. Honored.
And I have watched some of your interviews and some of your TED Talks, which I would recommend to everybody to get your newsletter from your website. We'll leave the details down below. But you've had an interesting journey, starting off with being born in Senegal, and take us from there.
Yeah, no. So again, thank you. Yes, I was born in Senegal. I'm sure everybody in South Africa knows where Senegal is, west coast of Africa. But in any case, right around age 2, my parents made the decision that so many African parents before them have made, and so many African parents since them continue to make. And it's this dreadful decision of having to leave your child, in this case, I was their first child, to leave their child behind as they were embarking on a journey for a better life. So ironically, they had to leave me behind. And in this case, they were heading to Europe. And why were they heading to Europe? Because in Europe, they could tap into the jobs that they needed to get in order to, and from the income of that job, they could be able to send money back home, money that would allow me to live a better life than I would have if I didn't have that access. So, and I think that journey is a journey that so many Africans keep making to this day. I'm not sure that South Africans necessarily have to make it. And here I'm going to stick to just Black South Africans because, I'm talking about just so people can relate, right? So in their case, what they're seeing is many other, Black Africans who are coming into South Africa, right? People from Zimbabwe, people from Malawi, people from, Zambia, Nigeria, all of these people. And I know there are many, what do you call it? Tensions there. But it is important for me that they hear the story of mine so that they really understand what's going on here, right? Because so my parents, I, as a 2-year-old, had to be separated literally from my parents physically. It's a very violent, traumatic, situation. And my parents left to go to Europe, but others like them may have probably left to come to South Africa. Why? Because probably South Africa, doing much better than our countries, right? They have many more jobs than our countries have. And humans will always do what humans would always have done. The history of humanity is humans going from one place to another because maybe there's better land for, for their cows, if that's all they have, to grass on, or because maybe this town has more jobs than the town that they come from. Even within South Africa, I'm sure many, South Africans can relate to the journey I'm talking about. Even within South Africa, you find yourself having to go from one place to another. I do know, for example, that right now, a lot of people are leaving Johannesburg, going towards Cape Town, right? Cape Town that they deem to be so white and so racist, supposedly. People are, I see so many, I've seen on my last trip, so many Black South Africans who have left, Johannesburg for Cape Town, saying, and I said, why? And they're like, well, because here there are more jobs. The economy seems to be doing better. See the key word, the economy, the economy. The economy seems to be better. And so people go from where it's not as good to where it seems the economy is doing good. And so my parents had to do that, just like anyone else. And then right around age 7, it happened again. At that point, what happened is my parents had realized that their immigration journey has worked. So because they didn't want to take me with them when they were leaving, because, uncertainty, you don't want to do that to a child. You don't know what's going to happen to you on the other side. You don't know how it's going to work out. So they left me behind with my grandma. But when it became clear that it had worked, then they called for me to be reunited with them. And then, boom, second time again in my life, I get separated in the most violent way from my caretakers. The only person that I knew so well to love me, and I loved her. And, she was my whole world, my grandma in this case, and I had to be separated from her. I don't blame my parents. They did what they had to do. I feel very fortunate that they did what they did. My grandma doesn't regret it. I don't regret it. Nobody regrets it. We did what we had to do. My parents did what they had to do, and I'm better for it. So, but my point is here, what the story doesn't tell is the fact that so many people, like my parents, did not get to have a migration journey as productive and as safe as theirs. What do I mean by that? I mean, so many Senegalese people right now are laying at the bottom of the ocean serving as fish food. Why? Because in these cases, these are not people who could emigrate under safe circumstances. And to this day, and this phenomenon is just accelerating. People packing themselves into little fishermen's boats, trying to cross over to Europe, again, in search for the same thing my parents were, a job, in places that seem to have a better economy, and that's the reason why they have more jobs. And so these people, the boat oftentimes tips over, and I mean, this is how we're losing thousands and thousands and thousands of our young people. I would even say our most entrepreneurial people, because by definition, those of us in any group, in any society, in any groups of humans, the ones who are saying, hey, you know what, enough is enough, we're going to have to migrate. We're going to have to migrate because things are dire. Those are, by definition, the most entrepreneurial among us. It's just the way it is. It doesn't mean that we're better or worse. It just is. But we need our entrepreneurs. And those are the ones laying at the bottom of the ocean, serving as fish food. How exactly do you think I'm going to make it? So anyway, and then when they're not doing this, somewhere they try to use planes, so hiding in the landing gear of a plane, and somewhere above England, the body just drops. Or when you open the cargo section of a plane, when it arrives, you see a frozen dead body, because no one told them, but this is no hiding place. It gets so cold up there. And then when they think the sea routes and the air routes are too dangerous, then they use land routes. And there, oftentimes, they get stuck in Libya. And when you're stuck in Libya, it's modern day slavery. Yes, we're being sold between $300 and $500. So maybe a lot of South Africans don't know about this, because they happen to be in a country that has a better economy than these other sub-Saharan African nations. But Black people, just like them, are going through these most horrendous circumstances. And so this is what I think I would love for people to hear and to realize what is going on outside of their, borders. And then if your answer is, I don't give a shit, then fine. Let's go on record for that. I don't give a crap. Why should I give a crap? You can stay with your mess. Don't come here. Which it seems like that's what they're doing to some African immigrants. When I see and hear about some of the treatments that some Black South Africans are doing to Black African immigrants, I am appalled. And so but by the way, this to me makes it very interesting, because under any other circumstances, if the two groups happen to be a different skin color, then for the most part, we put it just on the account of race. But here, we can't put it on the account of race, can we? Because this is Black on Black, isn't it? So all of a sudden, I'm starting to think that maybe race has nothing to do with this treatment that humans have of each other. So in any case, so family moved from Senegal to, I met them, I reunited with them in Germany. Then we decided to move to France after a couple of years of me being in Germany, because my parents said they were, they had decided they're going to stay in Europe. So because of historical ties and many different reasons, they decided they would move to France. And so we went to France, and there I basically went for business school, and just did all my education there. And after business school in France, I decided that France would be too small for my ambitions, because in France, it's a very top-down type of society. The social mobility elevator does not work. It's really cranky. It doesn't work really well, and you get stuck within the first layers of the building. So it just didn't work for me. And I looked around, and literally at that point, I could have gone pretty much anywhere I wanted to go in the world. I had passports that allowed me to do that. Again, my parents' sacrifice did pay off in the end. And so, in any case, I came to the United States, and there I was a headhunter in finance, working with companies like Google and Netflix before they became household name brands. I mean, Netflix was this tiny office in the middle of nowhere, San Jose, where I got lost trying to get to so many times. No one could imagine what Netflix would become today, because I know that now it's even available all over the continent. And so, in any case, but Matt, the part of the story here that I did not bring up for you was the most important aspect of my story, which is the story of my intellectual journey. Because when I arrived in Germany, little 7-year-old Magatte looked around, and all she could think of was, how come they have this and we don't? And all I was talking about was, back home, when grandma says time for shower, it's a 45 minutes affair between the decision is made and the water actually touches my skin. Why? Because grandma has to get a charcoal stove going, fan the coal, make it red hot, then put a pot of water, wait for it to boil, then put it onto a bigger bucket, mix it up with some cold water so it's safer temperature for my skin, and then somebody stronger than her drags it to the shower area, and there at last, some 45 minutes or to an hour later, I can finally take my shower. And I was just like, but here, mom says it's time for a shower, and I'm like, where's the bucket of cold water and of water? And she's like, come on, you silly, just jump in the shower. And I go there, turn the knobs around, the water's coming down. I'm like, wait, what? It was almost like a weird thing. And it was like that about everything. The paved roads, which we did not have so much of. It was about the grocery stores that were full of these beautiful, goods, like the bread, so many different types of bread, so many different types of apples. I mean, it was just amazing. And I think it was just like that. Yeah. I mean, all I was talking about is like, how come life seems so easy over here, and us, it's just like everything feels like so cumbersome. And that question became the defining question of my life. I needed an answer to that question. And eventually the question became, how come some countries like mine are poor while others are rich? And then I heard people come up with all types of things. They said, oh, darling, it's because of the IQ theory, because, there's an IQ theory out there. And this is one that I would love for South Africans to really hear, Black South Africans. There is a theory out there that us Blacks are simply genetically inferior. And the reason why so many people come to that conclusion is that they're looking at us as a group. And they're especially looking at Africa, what's going on over there. Because remember or find out that Africa is home to 90% of the Black people in the world. So whatever is happening with us, surely people are going to use it as, see? Well, home to 90% of the Black people in the world, yet the poorest region in the world to this day. Then they look over to South Africa and get this. They're thinking, oh, while the whites were in power, this country seemed to have been doing just very fine, thank you very much. But since the Blacks came to power, look at it, it's going down. But hey, they can't help themselves. They're so stupid. Their IQ is so low. And on top of that, they're so lazy. And they're so violent. Always committing crimes. What do you expect? And I'm wondering, South Africans right now, and don't take me wrong, I'm not pointing just at you, Black South Africans. I'm pointing at Senegalese. I'm pointing at Zimbabweans. I'm pointing at all of us who are not don't seem to be doing much to prove a different point. And what I mean by that is, as long as we remain poor, the rest of the world will think no more of us than this. So then you can complain, oh, the racist, the this or that. You know where I come from? Criticize by creating. You want to prove? You
Magatte,
want to prove? Yeah, go ahead.
what do you make yeah, there will be many people that are watching us right now that will already be reaching for the comment section to say that the reason Europe is rich and Africa is poor because they stole all the wealth from Africans.
Okay.
You would have heard that, I'm sure, many times.
Oh, many times. I hear it to this day, and I think it's the most pathetic and pushback that I hear. If you tell me that Africa is poor today because resource extraction or whatever, okay, just think about it this way. Do you really believe it's just about the natural resources? With natural resources alone, what can you do? If you have gas or oil or gold that's under your ground, and you don't have the technology to even go and take that out of the ground, then once you take it out of the ground, you have to build a whole type of, what do you call it, infrastructures for it to go from point A to point B. And then from there, it has to be turned into something else, right? Maybe fertilizers. It has to be turned into all types of things, tires, whatever, rubbers, rubber goes into tires and all of that stuff. So my point is, if it was just about natural resources, then stop. Don't have anybody take them anymore. How come countries like, Guinea, actually, most African nations, even in my own country, we just found tons of gas and tons of oil. But the point I'm trying to make here is natural resources alone ain't enough. Not only it's not enough, but also it's not a requirement. So let me explain there. If you don't have a means to extract your own natural resources, it's pretty much game over. Like right now, look at my country, Senegal. We have found oil, we have found gas, but let us all be real. It's these are very sophisticated technologies. I'm not saying that you don't have Senegalese people who maybe are right now working for companies that have that technology in different parts of the world. I'm not saying we don't have that. We do have some Senegalese people working in countries like that, with some part of the expertise. But do we have any Senegalese, company that can really tackle that? And also the amount of money that it requires? Let us just be, face the beast. No, not yet. Does it mean we can't get there? Of course we can get there. But right now, it is just not the case. So more has to happen. When you have something under your ground, more has just to happen. So if all Europe did is take our natural resources, steal them, by the way, take them, and there's nothing else that's happening to it, I'm not sure they would be where they are today. So my point here is something more has to happen to the natural resources for it to be worth anything. Maybe I'm going to give an example with agriculture. People will understand this better, and then they'll understand exactly what I'm talking about, because this is something that I'm personally going through every single time. I am building right now my third company, and they all have in common the fact that these are consumer goods, consumer packaged goods, brands that have embedded in their DNA the very best of my Senegalese traditional culture. Because that's how I address, pride in my culture. I bring it to the rest of the world through consumer brands. And so we manufacture so right now, take the shea butter. And I'm sure many people, so take the shea butter. I don't think, so shea butter only is grown in only two parts of the continent. So you have west, and on the eastern part, more like towards Kenya, Uganda, but South Africa, I don't know if you guys have much of it, but I'm sure you know about it. So We have shea butter. Again, it grows only in Africa. The beauty industry would not and could not do without shea butter. In almost every beauty product, skincare product that is a serious skincare product with amazing ingredients, chances are you will find some shea butter in there in different, variations of percentage in the formulation. So, and then Africans are complaining, and they've been saying, how come we're the only ones who have shea butter, and yet, they come and they take it from here, and then they take it to their countries, and then they bring it back to us in the form of finished goods and sell it to us for an outrageous price. How come? How come? The oil guys could say the same thing, and so on and so forth. Okay, let's follow this. Shea butter, tree, it's a nut. Think almost like an almond, like almond tree, how it looks and everything. You take it the way you're going to go from the almond nut to the almond butter. It's almost like the same process, but with obviously different steps, right? But that's what it is. So that whole process, it's handled by the Africans. The tree, taking care of the trees, as well as collecting the nuts, cracking them open, separating the butter, the fat from the fat from the rest, all of that stuff, and churning it out, and then you have this beautiful shea butter. Okay, but that's where usually the shea butter leaves our hands so far. You don't have many people who are making finished products that you can find on the global market right now. We are one of those. Our market is the United States of America. 100% of what we make is sold in the US. So and then I hear them all saying, we need to industrialize. Yeah, that's true. We have to. But between having a shea butter, producing that shea butter like that, and getting to the next step, which is, and now take the shea butter into a factory, into a lab, where you incorporate it into a final formulation. So it becomes a lip balm, it becomes a body balm, it becomes a shampoo, it becomes a lotion, it becomes any of these products that maybe Chanel or Dior will sell to you. It has to go through that process. And at that point, what does it mean? It means that somebody has to create a formulation, which you spend money on. It means that you have to have some other ingredients that might have to be brought in from your country, because your country just doesn't produce it. But you kind of need it in order to make a beautiful formulation where the finished product doesn't just slide on your skin, where it gets to be soaked in the proper way, where you get to have a right texture. Maybe you want it to be a little bit more shiny texture at the end, or maybe you want it to be a more, matte finish at the end because it has different use. Maybe you're using it to do makeup removal, or you're using it to prime the skin before you apply makeup to it. And if it's too greasy looking or too greasy finished, then the makeup is going to slide off of it, which means your customers are probably not going to want to use you as a primer. You don't qualify as a good primer. So all of this has to happen. A chemist has to work on this. It takes forever. And then when you're done with the formulation part, you have to send it out for various types of, for various types of testings. So we make sure that you're not going to have breakouts when you use it, or that, all of the stuff has to be looked at. How long does it product last before it starts to separate? So I can tell you, this has a shelf life of only 2 years or 18 months or 24, whatever. So you can have all of this information, right? So, but you have to have employees who are going to work in this. Now, let me walk you through what that means. In Senegal, which is probably the same way, which is the same way in many other sub-Saharan African nations, and this is probably where South Africa has gotten itself to so far. In my case, and it's explained very well in my book, remember that formulation that I told you about? After you work so hard for it, you spend the money on it. This is your trade secret. Your trade secret. Which means that if it's out in the marketplace, all the work you did, everyone else who didn't spend the time, didn't spend the money on it, now just gets to copy your formulation. You worked for free for everyone else. Who, under these circumstances, would want to actually do that? No one. No one. But in my country, in a way, you're almost forced to do that. Why? Because the thing is, remember when I told you that to have this beautiful formulation, yes, the shea butter that I can find in my country is in it. The baobab oil that I can find in my country is in it. The hibiscus oil that I can find in my country is in it.
Yes, you did.
But the candida wax that I use for it is not in my country. Now, what are you going to do? Tell me that I can only use something that's available in my country? Well, the truth is there's no wax in my country that can work for this. I'm not going to use beeswax because I'm vegan. So I'm not going to use beeswax. Beeswax is not vegan. It comes from bees. Anything that comes from animals is not vegan. But if vegan is your positioning, you can't use beeswax. So now what am I left with? I ask you, what? What? So it means that if you, so I have to use something that's not available there, which means we have to import it in. But now the problem is you're telling me that to import that in, when it arrives, that candida wax is going to be taxed, is going to have a 45% tariff on it. That's outrageous, because every 50 cents you add to my cost of goods sold, COGS, basically on the other end, for when I retail the finished product, and in order for me to make ends meet, make enough that I can pay my employees, I can pay my rent, I can pay my lights on, my electricity, with water, everything. I'm probably gonna, for every 50 cents that this costs me to make, I have to sell it for $2 on the other end. But now you just increased my price artificially, right? Because with your 45% tariff, it's gonna have to come out on the other end on the price that I'm going to charge the customer. So which means that for equal quality product, if I'm competing at the global stage, which I am, for equal quality product, the American lady doesn't have my problem, because when the shea butter she needs come from Senegal or comes from Benin or comes from Ghana, when that ingredient she needs to make the same lip balm I make, because it's not grown in the US, just like me, I don't have candida wax growing in Senegal. Here it's not going in the US, but when it arrives in the US says, do you know how much this woman is paying on the shea butter that comes from Africa? 0% tariff, 0%. So now compare that. She has 0% tariff on her stuff that's coming from outside. I have 45% tariff, and on some of them, 70% tariff. Let's say there's only one ingredient like that on her side and my side. Remember what I told you? And let's say this thing comes in and normally it costs $1. But because you said 45% tariff, now I have to spend $1.45 on it. So remember almost that 50 cents I told you. And what did I tell you? For every 50 cents you add here, on the other end, I have to sell it for $2 more. Every 50 cents wants $2 more in terms of finished price. So what does it mean? It means that this woman, hers costs $1 because everything she needed, it's $1. Mine is $1.45 because of that 45% tariff. When you're done doing that, it means she'll sell her product for, in her case, for $4. Remember, because I told you for everything you multiply roughly by 4, she sells hers for $4 at the end. Me, I'm at $1.50, so I have to sell mine for almost $6. At equal quality product, Matt, I ask you, who will be competitive and who can stay home? The one who has to sell the same product for $6 or the one who has to sell it for $4? Who do you think the customer is going to go for at equal quality, equal product, equal everything? She goes for the American lady because her country is not so stupid to put a 45% tariff on some of the inputs that her business needs. Now, you see, so that's the number one thing, first of all. So when you see something like that happen, it means that many companies who could do this, like me, they'll say, I'm not going to start that business. I cannot start a business where I'm transforming the shea butter into a finished product. Because when I do that, I'm not going to be competitive in the market. No one is going to buy my product. And not because you are not smart, not because you don't have a great idea, a beautiful product, whatever, simply because of that stupid tariff that's staying right there at the gate waiting for you. Now you say, but Magatte, how did you do it? Because you're still doing it. Well, what did I have to do? Go to meet with the head of customs in America. If it was the case, who do you think knows the head of customs? Who do you think has those relationships? It's always the same people who are connected. So in my case, I talked to somebody, to one of my connections, who's like, "Don't worry, I'll take you to the head of customs." So we go over there. I don't know if it was number two or number one, but anyway, and there we're for hours in this office looking through piles and piles of regulations and trying to think and trying to see how can I go around these stupid tariffs, because if the tariffs stand, I can't do this business because of what I said. So we look, and then he comes up with all of these folders. I mean, it's like literally, it's like binders after binders after binders, a whole bookshelf worth of binders. Each of these binders, each single sheet of it is some type of regulation. And finally, they find this one thing where he says, "Well, the only thing that I can find that's close enough to helping you is going to be this clause right here that says that if at least 90% of your products are exported out, then, and if you've been in business for 2 years, then you can benefit from an exemption on this tariff. The way it's going to work is you have to bring your formulation forward." And I'm like, "Forward to whom?" "To a government official." "Oh, really? Especially some of these governments where we know that you can't trust anything? You mean I bring you my recipe so that the next day some of your cronies have, bought it from you? Seriously? Really? Do you think that I'm that stupid?" So anyway, so bottom line is, it was a long story, but eventually we got through to things, and without having to give my stuff away, which is in a way not maybe normal, but yeah. So my point is, if everybody has to be jumping through those hoops, know the number, somebody at customs, high up, whatever, go there, spend all of this time, go through all of these regulations to try to find one clause that is not exactly what you need, but close enough that you might be able to do something. I mean, it's already hard for an entrepreneur to have to think about the right branding, to have to think about the right positioning, to have to think about supply chain, to have to think about the right marketing, to have to think about promotions, to have to think about sales and distribution. We have so many problems to think about. That's normal. But why would you want to add all of these added, bloated regulations and rules and customs to us? So my point is, you see, the same shea butter, if you want it to turn into a finished product, which in a way is what industrialization is, if you want for that phenomenon to happen, there's a lot of things you're going to have to do, Mr. Leader of this country. You're going to have to take down these tariffs. You're going to have to, which means opening the market. So when I see our Africans being so scared of the free markets, yeah, that's what it means. The same way America is allowing my products in. And by the way, Matt, this finished product, when it gets to America, do you know how much it gets taxed? What tariff it has? 0%. Because America wanted to do more trade with Africans. And it says we're going to do the AGOA, African Growth Opportunity Act. So many African nations on a variety of finished products, they can come into the US free of tariffs, which makes us even more competitive than the same good that might come from China or the EU. We don't know that. We don't know that. So anyway, so when I go back to the natural resources, my point is natural resources alone is worthless. It's worthless. And yes, you can say, "Oh, no, it's not. It's worth billions of dollars. Look, I was looking at this the other day when somebody said the same thing again. "Our natural resources, if our people were just selling it the way they were supposed to sell it and not stealing the proceeds from it." I looked at Congo, and it was year 2020, I think, because somebody was telling me about a minister who had stolen $150 million worth of, natural resource proceeds. And I said to this person, "Listen, I went back and I looked at how much the natural resources coming out of the Congo were worth that year. And I looked at how many people the Congo had that year. And I divided the amount of money, like let's say, you sold it at the right price, meaning no shenanigans, right? You sold it at the right price. And all the money went into the coffers of the state. Okay? You take that money, you divide it among all the Congolese who existed in the Congo that year. Do you know how much it was per Congolese person? $273. Really? Is that what's going to get you anywhere? So natural resources alone are really not the deal. And now then they're going to say, oh, well, what about, the people in Oman or whatever? Do you know that those people are probably are less than, we talk about less than a million people. When you talk about less than a million people, tons of money, it starts to add up for sure. But even those nations, the reason why we have a Dubai we have today is even Dubai realized at some point oil is going to run out. And just relying on just the proceeds from natural resources alone is the dumbest thing you can do to yourself. So for everyone who thinks natural resource alone is the way, you're putting your finger in your eye and all the way to the other end of your head. This is the most nonsense I've ever heard. But so if you want us to be able to make something of our natural resources, in this case, shea butter, you're going to have to start looking at all of these laws and regulations, because when you look there, you realize that Africa is the most regulated region in the world. When I told you I went to that customs office and we have binders and binders and binders of rules and regulations, where on the US side, there was basically no binder for what I was trying to do. Are you kidding me? I basically answer 5 questions on a website just so that they see who I am and what I'm doing. And at the end, they say, nope, you're exempt from everything. You don't have to pay anything. Done. In 5 seconds, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do and what I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be respecting. Done. So no laws, no regulations over here. Here, you're giving me binders worth of it. So my point is, for everybody listening to us and thinking natural resources is the way forward, you're mistaking yourself. Is it helpful? Yes. When you have it, it is helpful. But alone, it gets you nowhere. And most importantly, nations who have zero natural resources, like Singapore, like, places like Switzerland, yet how come you're Switzerland and you're the one who sells the most chocolates in the world? Because they manufacture. They go from the raw cocoa to a finished product. But the process to going from raw cocoa to finished products requires things that our states do not understand. Our state do not understand that you have to let the entrepreneur free to move around and to do what they need to do. Even our labor laws are the worst in the world in terms of all the hoops we have to jump through, and we have no freedom of employment between an employee and an employer. Anyway, I feel like go ahead.
So really what you're talking about is some pretty nonsensical rules and regulations. But why is this so pervasive in Africa? Why is it that African countries seem to have the monopoly on bad economic legislation?
Yeah, I think for that question, Mike, we would have to take people back onto a time capsule. I think what a lot of people, because for me, it was the first thing. When I discovered all of this, I was like, you got to be kidding me. And by the way, I was just like, you got to be kidding me. And then I said, but why? How did we get here? Have we always been this way? I mean, I wanted to understand, once you realize something, you want to understand how we got there. And so it was just natural for me. And so in trying to understand how we got there, how is it that all of these African nations seem to have given each other the word? And that's why usually when I talk about these things, I have no problem saying Africa. And people are like, how? I mean, Africa is 54 nations. We're not a country. Well, when it comes to this, we look like a village. We share this problem so much that we look like a village. So I will keep saying Africa when I talk about this issue of lack of economic freedom. So what happens is, back in the late 50s, early 60s, as the independences, so-called independences, were happening all across, colonized Africa, you were also at a very critical moment in time globally in terms of these two main ideologies that always have been at war with each other, right? On one end, freedom, the concept of freedom as represented by Western states, right? And for the most part, they were practicing capitalism, which is free market capitalism. So it goes hand in hand together, free market capitalism, facing off with the Eastern Bloc nations. Primarily, we're talking Russia, China, and those guys. And of course, when ideology is battling, they're looking for influence. And in this case, these nations were looking for influence, looking south. And you have to understand that at that time, 3 things were happening. Number one is almost any sane or respectable intellectual pretty much has drunken the Marxist socialist Kool-Aid. We believed that it worked, right? So that's how things were at that time. At the same time, it has been notoriously the Marxists who have been fighting for racial equality. We have to give them that. They were the ones fighting for racial equality in a very unequal racial, scene. And last but not least, you also had what do you call it? So those two were primarily happening, and then what it led to is the fact that during that time, the African liberators of the time then made their choice. They said, okay, these two camps are looking for influence. We are going to side with, we're going to, basically, it's not going to be we're going to side with, it was more like we're going to side against. So you, the West, are the ones who colonized us. So surely, whatever it is that you're for, or whatever that you're doing, forget us. We're not with you. We're going to side with the other people. And so it is there at that very right critical juncture of our history that we took the wrong fork on the journey. We went with the Marxist socialist of the times, right? And especially, I think everybody listening here, if you wanna understand how all of this really worked out, you can read my book. You can also read from George Aite, Ghanaian economist, who is, I think, one of the most insightful economists to have really looked in a place where no one else has looked before. So this is how most African nations, as they were gaining their independences, basically started out with more or less Marxist socialist governments. Even the ones who were not supposedly socialist, like Nigeria, still, and to this day, are operating 5-year plan very much like, Soviet style. So, because, as with everything, there is a spectrum. You can be capitalism can go all the way from here to all the way from there, as with anything in life. So when you're right here, almost borderline capitalism and socialism, and you still call yourself capitalist, it's nowhere near the threshold of capitalism that's needed in order for the progress and the innovation that we need to happen. So this is how everything started for us. But sadly, we never reconsidered. We never opened that side of our history and started looking at these laws.
Now, what would you say to people, because it's a very popular talking point in South Africa, that we're heading to the age of a new world order? The West is on its knees, it's on its way out, we're living in a multipolar world, China's going to take over, Russia's going to be the bully on the playground. And in actual fact, capitalism is dead. Marxism is the way forward. It was just done wrong the last time. What would you say to that?
I would say wake up, learn history and learn economics. It's going to do you so good. And what do I mean by that? China. Let's take China. China is going to take over anytime soon. So first of all, I want to tell Africans, this is so sad for me. It's the saddest thing ever that I have to deal with, because it's like, when are we ever going to grow up? When are we ever going to go past 5-year-old? Because this is a reasoning of a 5-year-old who has no self-esteem, no belief in self, always looking for, okay, so this is I got to unpack this. So China going to be number one. Innovation. If you want to become and remain number one, you're going to have to be the master of innovation. Period. Innovation does not happen where there is no freedom. You can create great engineers, for sure. You can create great mathematicians, for sure. But they're not necessarily the ones who create the businesses. Steve Jobs does not need to understand any of engineering that Wozniak understood. But that combination is powerful. Woz, without Steve Jobs, could still have remained the same Woz, very intelligent, has all of his knowledge in his mind. The computer is in his mind. The computer that they brought together was in his mind. But without, what's his name? Steve Jobs. That would never have materialized. Never. But the reason why it could materialize is because when you live in an environment of freedom, where you can challenge the status quo, where you can say, no, this is wrong, where you have freedom of speech, because that's through that freedom of speech that, some type of brainstorming start to happen, and you're starting to wonder, what about this? What about this? What about that? And you're pushing back on each other. It doesn't matter who is right, who is wrong. And then you go try things. So until China fully embraces freedom in all the ways that matter, good luck becoming number one.
So
And
let's turn. Yeah.
so
No,
that's on
carry
China.
on.
That's on China. Russia, please give me a break. I mean, study the history of Russia and tell me how you can keep repeating the same, unless, like Einstein said, craziness is repeating the same thing, hoping for a different outcome. So Russia, for me, is one of those typical examples. So now, think about this. Now coming back to Africans, I really think this is what's going on with us Africans. And anybody who's going to be stung by what I'm going to say, the fact that you're stung tells you that I'm probably right. So I would encourage you to go somewhere in a little corner, lick your wounds, but at some point go back and really think about it. Let me share why. We have been traditionally dominated, right? At least since colonialism to present day. I don't think anybody can look at Africa and be like, oh, you guys are the leaders of the world. It's not. Could we become? Absolutely. Have we managed to? No. We sit there complaining for all types of reasons as to why we are still where we are, colonialism being one of them. And I argue with them, no, we're not poor today because of colonialism, simply not. And if you want to understand that, you go back to what we talked about earlier. If we had done all of these reforms that needed to be done, we would not be where we are today. Nations like Botswana have managed their countries way better from that standpoint. Look at Botswana. They could have been even more, they could have even performed better than Singapore, if you ask me, if they had even pushed the free market, move further. But at least they were more free market than almost any one of us on the continent. A nation like Rwanda is also embarking on that journey of the free markets, and they're starting to see the results. So anywhere this stuff has been tried, it's worked, right? So we have never bothered to understand really how economics works. We have never bothered to revise and to question our policies. We have never bothered to understand any of this, and more importantly, to question our so-called leaders. Thomas Sankara should be somebody we look up to. Are you kidding me? Are you really kidding me? People like Nyerere, really, seriously? I mean, come on. I can understand why we have all of this emotional, compassion for them. Because yes, I understand they were fighting for African liberation. I get it. But beyond that, they've done everything wrong. They fought for liberation, and when we had it, they put the wrong economic system on it. And I'm still waiting for most of them, for history to judge them the way it was supposed to. At least me, I'm not waiting for it. I know that now. But anyway, so here we are, because we never bothered to look at this legacy, and knowing that socialism has never bred, prosperity, innovation. Anywhere that stuff has been put on, it's just brought misery and death and poverty. We have never questioned that, and therefore we still are where we are. And meanwhile, we are full of resentment. We are full of hate. We are full of despise. We are just reeking with it. We are reeking with it. But those feelings are the feelings of the weak, are the feelings of those who don't believe in themselves. I believe we feel that way. Many Africans feel this way because many of them have given up on ever becoming anybody's. So, insofar as they blame the West for where they are today, in a very misguided way, if you ask me, and very distracting way and very destructive way, then what do they want? Oh, but these people that we hate so much, we just will never have the power to stick it to them the way we would like to stick it to them. So we have to find the people who can stick it to them. Let's see the bullies who could stick it to them. So who is that? Oh, maybe China. Oh, maybe Russia. So I think this new world order that they're talking about is just something that they would love to see happen. But make no mistake, guys. And I call them those in the back. Those of you in the back listening, make no mistake. Swapping one massa for the other is never going to change your problems. All I can guarantee you is that 10 years from now, if playing with the Russians is what you want to do, playing with the CCP, and I'm very careful on this, CCP rather than Chinese. The Russian government rather than the Russians. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So If the plan is for you to play with these people, for you to say, look, we are pathetic, we're losers, we're never going to get there, but we hate the West anyway, so can you please, you big bully, come and punch them in the nose? That's all it is. It's all it is. This is like primal, um, primal
Response.
hate, primal response. There's nothing thoughtful about this. Nothing. And so it's basically it's a reaction of people who have given up on themselves to ever be anywhere. And they're just going for primal, instincts and reflexes for just like, hey, you hurt me, I want to punch you in the face. Instead of being like, wait a second, let me take a step back and let me strategize. Let me strategize a path ahead in which I can win. Because if you strategize that way, you realize very quickly that your salute is not going to be in dealing with the CCP or Russia alone. I'm not saying you don't pick your partners, but if you think I'm going to swap one massa for the other and that's going to solve all your problems, good luck with that. So my message is, please wake up. People, please wake up.
Now, Magatte, I'd like to talk about South Africa, because South Africa obviously has got a long, complicated history, highly industrialized, and even got more industrialized because the apartheid regime was isolated. So we had to make everything in South Africa. It was hard to import stuff in the 70s and 80s. So factories were built, people were put to work. We produced just about everything we needed. But we've seen a massive deindustrialization of South Africa over the last while. And ever since the new South Africa has come along, there's been legislation which has not helped business at all, race-based legislation, and we have continued threats of the removal of property rights in South Africa. And right now, that's the hottest topic. What's your views on those kind of policies and the road that South Africa is on?
This is pretty much shooting yourself in the foot. It is pretty much shooting yourself in the foot. It's very sad. It's very sad. This is so sad because it happens all the time. I truly believe that Nelson Mandela had the best of intentions. For the longest time, I figured that South Africa is where it is today because of, Mandela eventually taking over and knowing that those guys were pretty much commies, they were self-proclaimed commies. To me, not looking at it deeper, I thought to myself, okay, he probably brought his commie ways to South Africa. And of course, fast forward today, they are where they are. They probably put in place all the worst policies they could put in place that would be killing businesses, stifling killing industrialization, making it go backwards. Meanwhile, incentivizing people to basically not be productive members of society. And what I mean by that is all of these race-based, policies that supposedly were designed to kind of correct, whatever, harm or whatever, inequality was done before. I understand where that sentiment could come from. It's only later that I understood that actually, despite being a commie, Mandela said, "Oh, well, we're not going to touch the free markets." When he came to power, I mean, I discovered that actually quite, maybe 5-6 years ago, thanks actually to a South African, Fumlani. He's a great guy. If you haven't had him on his show yet, you probably should. He's amazing.
I have.
Oh, great.
Fumlani
So anyways,
Majosi, yeah.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's the one who opened my eyes to this. But anyway, even beyond that, so this is very sad because I think, look, it's very simple. If you want prosperity, prosperity is built by entrepreneurs. What do entrepreneurs need? They need an enabling business environment. You touch that, you screw everything up. Property rights, secure and transferable property rights is part of it. Rule of law is part of it. All types of policies that stand in the way of people developing the virtue and character that's needed in order to thrive in a good business environment is also part of it. And what I see is that South Africa, from ANC days, especially past, Mandela, like you were saying, when Zuma came in place, that's when all of it started to become worse and worse and worse, right? And the absolute thing for any South African today, I don't care what skin color you are, I don't care what skin color you are, if you are South African and you want something good for your country, you want prosperity and everything that prosperity brings, and the prosperity that trickles all the way to you, you are going to have to protect the concept of property rights. Because let me walk you then through you putting yourself into the other person's shoes. It's very easy to look at the world only from your side. But you have to understand how the world works, so you can see how what you're pushing for is going to come straight back to bite you in the ass. You, who just promoted it. You're going to say, no more property rights. I told you that I'm going to take... Okay, so imagine, Mike, you are a business owner, you're owning properties right now. You're building, you have built a business and all of that good stuff. You have a company, you're hiring a bunch of people. Maybe you have a wine farm business. You're making wine, you're making all of that stuff. You have an Airbnb, you have a bread and breakfast on it, a hotel. You're employing hundreds of people, right? And putting money back into your country. Me, Magatte Wade, I'm one of these people that maybe I live in poverty. Ideally, I would love to have a job. And I would love to have a job, and somebody's telling me that they're going to come to you, they're going to take your wine farm, they're going to take everything, and they're going to spread it among others like me. And I'm like, yay! Because I don't understand how the world works. But now let me help you understand how the world works. You took that from Mike. Let's say the whole thing is worth, I'm just going to give easy numbers. Maybe the whole thing is worth $10,000. And maybe there's 5 of you that I have to share this among. So each one of you gets $2,000. You get that $2,000. Each of you. Somebody, one person might we see this all the time, even among our own family members. Again, doesn't matter which skin color you are. You give an inheritance to all of your kids, and one of them is going to go and take it to, girls, drinks, who knows what else. And in Senegal, maybe you'll go marry a 4th wife. That's how you use the money. But nothing productive with it, right? Then it's spent. You have nothing to show for. Somebody else is so everybody's gonna start to do different things. Somebody might even want to build a business and say, I'm gonna build something, or I'm gonna buy a home, and I'm gonna invest. But all of a sudden you're thinking to yourself, but wait, do I really want to invest? Do I? Because didn't they tell me that it's going to be taken away from me? Property rights doesn't exist. I own nothing. Do I really want to invest in that? So exactly, what do you do in that situation? So, and if you do the same, somebody else does the same, where exactly do you think more jobs are going to come from? If everybody's like tying their own hands because they're like, I can't risk this because this is not safe. I am not guaranteed the right to my property. That's all that property rights means. And you do that, next guy door does that, the other lady does that, nobody's building businesses, nobody's investing in anything in the country. Where exactly do you think, the jobs are going to come from and the income that they could create? So pretty much now everybody is looking around, there's nothing going on. And then if you think that, and then even the money that supposedly the government was going to give to you for free is not coming because no one is setting anything up. No one. So all of a sudden, that's how you watch yourself, the whole thing decaying. The whole thing is going down. So people have to think. We cannot be lazy thinkers. A lazy thinker is to think about something all the way to where it pleases you. And then you're like, okay, voila, see, we told you it's going to work. No, it's not going to work. This is going to come straight back to bite you in the behind. And by the way, guess what, guys? Those of you who don't have an escape plan, those of you who can't leave South Africa, are going to be the ones who are going to have to suffer the most, because everyone else who can is fleeing right now. Do you know how many people are trying to come to the US, to Canada and everything? And who are these people? the ones who are interested in building something, the ones who actually want it, because they're the ones who are ready to build the jobs. Those jobs provide an income. With that income, you can buy yourself a home, you can buy yourself a car, you can take your kids to a good school so they can have a better life. You have a better life. They create new products that are going to make your life easier. When you go to a dentist to get whatever, tooth treatment done, it's less pain because somebody has developed a technology that makes root canal much easier, where you don't sense anything. That's what entrepreneurs do to society. That's what they do. So anyone who tells you that they're suckers, that's not what it is. So when people think this way, I would encourage South Africans to really, really bring their minds back together and understand that what you're going after, what the EFF is going after. I wish they called themselves a different name, by the way, because calling yourself economic freedom fighter, you're not fighting for economic freedom. Maybe you want financial freedom, but economic freedom is not what you're fighting for, because what your country needs is economic freedom. What you're promoting is the opposite of economic freedom. So you see, even there, the what's the word for it? Really, how they just don't understand the world is mind-boggling. And so I would just really recommend to everybody to stop thinking when something is too good to be true, it usually is. And having everything free is not good. Everyone in your own families, think about it. Think about it in your own families. The people that think, we all have these people in our families. Somebody who we all give to. We give. They always come back and they want more. We give. These are usually the members of our families that all of us know it's not getting anywhere. This person is doing nothing, and we also know probably that maybe the best to do would be to cut the free stuff to this person. They need to get off their butt and go do something. We all see it in our own families. So this whole free everything at the government level is nothing different from what we're all seeing in our families. This person who always comes, I need more. Give me. We all know. So if you want to know where this is going to lead, look in your own families. Look to your own friends who always come to you for something free. Do you see them actually getting up and doing something? No, you don't see them. But this is what happens. It's very sad, because you're giving welfare supposedly to help. I understand this feeling, where it's coming from. But the problem is the unintended consequence. Whether we like it or not, it's there. The more you give to your friend that always comes back for free, or to that family member that always comes back, you see what happens. They become more lazy. They don't want to do anything, and they keep on waiting for you, and it's a never-ending game. It is the same thing. Nothing different here.
Well, Magatte, you started off by telling us how the Senegalese people are getting into little boats and ending up as fish food. In South Africa, we've got an issue where some of our best and brightest aren't leaving in fishing boats. They're actually leaving on jets. They're flying to the financial capitals of the world, peoples of all colors. It's astonishing the number of South African professionals that are leaving. These are people that could stay here in the safety of having legislation in their favor, but they'd rather go to countries that are prosperous. And I think all the BE in the world is not going to help if the economy goes down much further than what it is. Thank you so much for your wisdom. I think it's very important that South Africans hear from you. Magatte Wade, I would encourage everybody to find her books, to watch her TED Talks, to watch her many interviews. Thank you so much for your contribution to the State of the Nation, to everybody that's joined us today. Thank you so much, and we'll see you the next time on the State of the Nation.
Thank you so much for having me. Sorry. Thank you so much for having me, Mike.